Folks, it's been a minute since we've had to do one of these. Welcome to an emergency episode of the Alamo Audible podcast. This is your host, Jared, joined by my co-host, Adrian Bermudez, on a rare Sunday afternoon recording.
Mm.
But we've got a lot to get into. Within a span of like 4 days, UTSA's men's basketball head coaching leadership has turned over.
Yes.
Like the fastest hire maybe in school history.
Yeah.
But definitely for an external move, yeah.
Sure.
Engineer, the last time we recorded on Sunday afternoon.
I can't recall, bro, but I'm certain we've never recorded on a St. Patrick's Day before. And so Jared and I did put aside our green beer plans to deliver this breaking news to you. So yes, indeed, priorities are in order here.
Absolutely. Well, cool. We're gonna fly through this one, right? And we made the decision to start out with talking about the hire, and then we'll talk about the Steve Henson era after that.
Mm.
The name to know: Austin Claunch comes to UTSA from Alabama, who I think they're a 1 seed in the tournament this year.
Mm.
Is that right?
I believe so.
1 seed, 2 seed, but they've got a legitimate chance to win it all this year in March. But Claunch has only been there for 1 year. He was previously the head coach at Nichols State, where he had a tremendous run there. Really, really tremendous.
Yeah, Austin Claunch is just, I think this is at least on the surface, it looks like basketball may have found their equivalent of a head coach, Jeff Traylor. Here, he's a Texas guy, originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina, but grew up here in Houston, Texas, H-Town, went to straight Jesuit, which is a premier Catholic institution here in the city. And I just absolutely loved what he had to say whenever the hire was announced, Jared. And to quote, "This is genuinely a dream come true being from Texas and growing up in the state. I take a lot of pride in being a Texan and knowing the passion of the community as a whole. The potential of the UTSA program really excites me." Here's the best part. "I think we can be really good for a long time, but I don't think it will take a long time to be really good." Mic drop. Coach Austin Claunch, let's go. Are you kidding me? Let's go, bro. And that's the vision, right? A guy that has the vision and the dream for the university like that. That was what we saw from President Taylor Amy, from AD Lisa Campos, from head coach Jeff Traylor, from baseball coach Pat Hallmark, from women's basketball coach Karen Aston. They have that vision for the program that they oversee. And here comes Austin Claunch, man, absolutely sharing that incredible vision. And so absolutely love it. The dude came out of the gate hot with that quote, man.
I need him to sell it to me, Adrian. I have been a battered and beaten UTSA men's basketball fan for so long now. And I think I speak from a lot of the fan base when I say I'm not ready to believe yet. I need that first press conference from Coach Claunch where he comes out guns blazing and he lays out a vision for this program. And I think he has to address some of the difficulties head on for me to really be diving in with excitement and positivity, I guess, for the state of the program moving forward.
Absolutely. Look, this guy, he's got a good resume, man. Look, so at Nichols, he was 90-61 with a damn near 600 winning percentage over the course of 5 seasons. The only losing record was his first year there, of course, trying to turn the program around. And so we'll give him that. And while he was there, he was the Southland Conference Coach of the Year, 2020 and 2021. Back-to-back Southland regular season champs, 2021 and 2022. The youngest head coach in D1 men's basketball for 3 seasons. Probably the youngest coach maybe in UTSA history, youngest head
Oh man,
coach.
that's a great question. He may be. Yeah,
This dude
that's
was
a
born
question for
in
Stephen Whitaker.
1989. Okay, for reference, I was born in 1992. Jared, you were 91,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay, he is our freaking age, man. And we're sitting here with our podcast talking
Adrian and I
about
have talked
him.
about that. Like, when is it going to be time where we're older than the coaching hires? I think we still got a few years ahead of us, but it won't be long.
It won't be long. It won't be long. He was named in 2020 to ESPN's 40 under 40. And he seems to really, really have incredible energy, man. He's done a great job over there at Alabama, where, look, man, he's just like ascended that coaching rank so quickly
Hmm.
because he was just hired at Alabama in what 2023. So I mean, he's a hot commodity. And Jared, you talk about how quickly the coaching hire was made. I have a feeling that UTSA and Austin Claunch have been in cahoots behind the scenes for quite
It's
some
an
time here.
interesting theory, right? It's an interesting theory because it's pretty rare to see a coach give up a head coaching position to go be an assistant somewhere. But it makes you wonder if Claunch already knew that he was going to get that UTSA job when he left Nickel State.
I think so. Maybe the writing was on the wall, even going back to last season. Is that what you're saying, Jared?
Maybe so.
He just
Because I
needs
mean,
to.
there were plenty of rumors that UTSA, like through search firms, was reaching out to coaching candidates last year. Steve Luntz, or Steve Lutz being, I think, the primary one that most people heard about. He ended up going to Western Kentucky.
Mm,
But
yeah.
you would think if they were that far along in the process, they were actually talking to candidates. Like, I don't think it's super far fetched to think that they could have had some contact with Claunch and be like, "Hey, we've decided to not make a coaching change this year, but stay tuned." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
wink, wink, nod, nod, no handshake, no paper, no ink,
Oh, man.
but enough where you would feel comfortable, going to Alabama, getting that experience at, what's become a blue blood program now in college basketball and getting
Yes.
a massive pay raise as well.
Yes. Yes. Incredible, man. Incredible. So Alabama was ranked 19 going into the SEC tournament. They dropped the quarterfinals to Florida, 102 to 88, but 21-11 overall. Really, really strong team and can certainly make a run, but I don't think they're going in as a one seed.
No, yeah, there'll be two or three for sure at best.
Here's one thing that is extremely notable of Launch's resume, and that was prior to being the head coach at Nicholls State. In 2012 and 2013 at George Mason, he
Mm.
was the director of player development. And what do we know about being a head coach, Jared? The three phases, right? It's getting the players here. It's recruit. So the recruiting. It's the developing the recruits on and off the court, the field, whatever it is. And then being able to coach, right? Actually being able to coach winning basketball, winning football, winning whatever sport it is, being able to coach at a winning level in that arena. And so you got to be able to recruit. You have to be able to develop the recruits, the talent that's here, and you have to be able to coach. You have to be able to coach, right? And so when I look at his resume, Jared, I mean, it certainly looks like he can do all three of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting for a guy that's young to already have proven himself as much as he has, right? I think usually when you make a hire for a guy this young, it's like just looking at the potential, right? Like this guy or gal brings something special to the table that you're not getting from other candidates, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, I mean, what he did at Nicholls, I mean, that alone, I think, is worthy of making the jump to a program like a UTSA. But then to have him also have the experience at these other programs, being that top assistant at Alabama and helping that program out as well, it just really adds to what he can bring to the table. But one thing I think we haven't addressed yet that is certainly worth discussing is just for as much as people bemoan the lack of resources for the basketball program at UTSA, the facilities and all of that, valid criticisms for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I do kind of push back on the budget side of things, right? But Nichols is like one of the poorest athletic departments in the whole country, right? Like if
Mm,
you were to take their operating budget and compare that against every Division 1 program, they're got to be bottom 5%. Their gym makes the convocation center look like Madison Square Garden, right? And sure, I mean, you're competing against Southland competition and not American athletic competition, but they did not let that hold them back, right? And they won those back-to-back regular season championships, right?
yeah.
So Claunch has already shown that he can do more with less. You know, that that infamous UTSA slogan that we all hear so much of. But I think he's going to embrace that lack of resources and treat it as just the reality of the situation and not something that he's going to make excuses about or demotivate
Right.
them, right? Because
Right.
he's already shown that he can win without, having a barber in the locker room after every practice or whatever the hell goes on in Memphis and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And even more than that, looking at as a challenge that he wants to overcome.
Yeah,
We may not have that now, but I bet you I'll get it here for us. Right.
yeah,
And that's sort of that embracing the difficulties that we saw from Jeff Traylor, and look at how much support he's been able to rally behind his
yeah,
program. Same with Pat Hallmark, same with Karen Aston. And I think that's a really, really critical part of taking a job at UTSA, because even going back to the days of UTSA playing out of a single wide trailer, or Dr. Lisa Campos getting hired, and you guys will hear this on that episode, but her office being way off campus over by Park West, and now being able to embrace that challenge and get facilities built, get something put in place, getting support. It's one of those things that comes with the territory. But look, UTSA has proven that it's been able to win without those resources going back decades. I mean, this is a team that the football program had one jersey, one football, horrible training facilities. Still managed to have an incredibly successful first 3-4 seasons of the program. You look at basketball, 2011, we made a March Madness. We made the NCAA tournament despite the Convocation Center, right? And so, sure, we were in lower tier conferences, but it doesn't take away from the fact that we were able to bring talent here and win despite the facilities, or despite the lack of resources, I should say. And so, Austin Claunch being able to embrace that and wanting to overcome it, get those resources here, that's the absolute mentality that you have to have. You've got to know what you're working with and know that you're going to be the guy that improves it.
right. I mean, UTSA clearly needed a program builder for the men's basketball coach. Just like when
Mm,
Jeff Traylor came in, they were looking to level up the expectations and what was available to them. So they're going to need a coach that can hit the pavement and is not intimidated or is going to be exhausted by reaching out to donors, going and visiting high schools, visiting the AAU circuit, hitting up some local businesses, trying to get some NIL engagement, trying to drive attendance, right, is a big one, right? And having someone that has that really outgoing personality and that energy, that passion, to go out and almost take on a second and third job, right? Of being this like kind of external facing,
yeah.
mini
Yeah.
celebrity, right, in the community, like we've seen Jeff Traylor become, is really critical, right? And I think landing that part of the hire is really important because, like I said earlier, I mean, I think the most important thing with this hire is they can make people care about basketball again. How many basketball episodes do we do this season? One, two?
Hardly. At the very beginning and then at the very end.
There's nothing more important, I think, than someone who can re-energize the community. And yeah, I would love to see the program, winning 20 plus games consistently again. But the steps to get to that is to get 1,500 people in the condo every night again, to get a student
Hmm.
section going again, to have
Yeah.
people that want to finish out their careers at UTSA.
Yeah.
All the culture aspects, not so much like within the locker room, but I think like within the rest of campus and the San Antonio community. I mean, as long as I've been involved in UTSA since I was accepted to the university, I've never really seen any type of engagement and connection between the wider San Antonio community and the UTSA basketball program. And it's so easy to be like, oh, well, yeah, the Spurs, suck up all the oxygen when it comes to basketball in San Antonio. Yeah, there's some truth to that. There's some fairness to that. But look at what U of H is able to do with the Rockets a mile from campus.
Yes. Yes. Great point, man. Great point.
I'm not even implying that UTSA, could get on that level or needs to be on that level. But you can't really tell me that there's no room for college basketball fandom if you can put an exciting product in the court and you can compete and you don't lose to programs like Our Lady of the Lake. You don't lose to programs like St. Edwards, right? Where people are going to show up and know that you're going to compete against good competition and you're going to blow out bad competition. It's not a really high expectation, but getting to that point, I think will help a lot to improve the standing of this program within its community.
You just completely rocked my world with what you just said, Jared. Unbelievably so. Houston, really and truly, is a basketball town. Not to the degree that San Antonio is, but Houston's favorite sport has always been basketball. Their favorite team has always been the Rockets.
Wait, when you said not to the degree that San Antonio is, do you mean to say that San Antonio is more of a basketball town or less?
The fandom of average Spurs fan is 1,000 times more rampant than the fandom of average Rockets fan.
Okay, I'll agree with you on that, but I will also say I don't think San Antonio is a basketball town at all. People love the Spurs because they win. But my experience is those Spurs fans are not really following the rest of the NBA. They don't pay any attention to college basketball.
But they can tell you every person on the IR and like what their spraying is. They know who the starting five
for the Spurs.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're diehard Spurs fans. Okay, so I'll give you that. But I think the point remains the same. Houston loving basketball and loving their Rockets still has really, really rallied behind U of H and their success that they've had. And, the Fertitta Center, brand new arena, everyone's filling that place up. They want to see Cougars basketball. They want to see the Cougars win. You're walking around Houston today and everyone's talking about how they blew the championship game for the Big 12 and just completely didn't show up. I mean, that's a talking point in Houston, which 10, 15 years ago, no one would have been talking about Cougars basketball. But they also, have a little bit of a rich history there and that tie in with the Rockets whenever we go back to Phi Slam and Jammin' days.
And they also had a bad facility up until, what was it, 2-3 years ago when they opened the renovated Fertitta Center.
And so that come up happened with the lack of the facility resource, right?
Exactly.
Because that's really whenever they put their work in and came up the ranks. And so San Antonio, loving the Spurs, being a big basketball town, if UTSA is playing good basketball, they will absolutely rally behind that. They want to see good basketball being played. San Antonio likes winners, man, just like every other sports town does. They want their team to win, and they want them to be good. And I think there's a real shot for UTSA basketball to capture the hearts of San Antonians in the same fashion that football has, especially if you start winning games and then you give them an awesome venue to go watch games in.
The FAU Owls have sold out like all their home games in in an arena that is identical to the Convocation Center. I mean, you could, if you had one eyes closed and you're like looking back and forth between the two, like you're the optometrist, you could not tell the difference between those two facilities. And as you can question if San Antonio is a basketball community or not, but you definitely can't say Boca Raton is a basketball community.
Yeah.
And no one has been talking at all this season about FAU's arena and how bad it is, how bad the game day experience is, because they put a good product on the court. And they got really hot at the right time. They made their Final Four run, and that's a 1 in a million kind of chance, right? But you don't have to get to that level to get some good community engagement, to drive some attendance, and to start to have people believing that this thing can grow into something that is respectable. I don't think it's like too crazy to think that UTSA could be where UAB is, that they could be where South Florida is right now. Where I mean, like what FAU is doing right now, I think is pretty extreme, right? But I think being to where they make that tournament every couple of years, and they go in as a 12 seed instead of a 16 seed, like that's not a crazy stretch to me.
Yep.
With or without a new basketball arena.
Yeah, man, totally. And let's not discount, and we're not gonna spend 15 minutes on the Convocation Center, but let's not discount the home field advantage that a packed Convo can actually bring the Roadrunners. That place is insanely loud whenever it gets filled up, and you're so
Hmm.
close to the court. I mean,
Hmm.
hell, players have to walk, opposing team has to walk through the concession line to get to their locker room, dude. I
Oh
mean, like,
man,
this is serious, serious home field advantage. Like, it's a tough place to play whenever
it
you get
is.
that place filled up. You get the
Hmm.
band out there jawing at guys. You get the drum line right there on the baseline, banging those things. And dude, it's insane. It's insane. So if we get back, because Jared and I, when we were students, we remember that filled up convocation center. And so even if you could get back to that, uh, man, it could really be something special. And
I
I'm
always
confident.
say I want every generation of student, like within a 4 year, 5 year rotating cycle, to get to experience one court storming if you're
No,
like a diehard athletics fan.
yeah.
When's the last time anyone rushed the court at the convocation center? I don't know, man. I don't even know if people did it for that crazy Old Dominion comeback a couple
I don't
years
think
back.
so. I don't think so. I don't think so.
And,
And
and when's the last time like really like critical basketball was played in that facility for the men? Like,
gosh,
I
man,
don't know.
it was
It's
like
been a long
a
time.
yeah. Because even if we go back to the Keaton Wallace, Javon Jackson days, I mean, it doesn't ever feel like there was too much on the line
Yeah, that's my
whenever we were
recollection
playing those
too.
games. You know,
Yeah.
we had some exciting moments, great comebacks in there, but
Yep.
what were the stakes?
It never
I
felt
don't
like a
think they
game
were.
was an event, you know?
Yeah. The stakes weren't quite there. And one thing I'll also take note of is a lot of people like to evaluate like a new hire like this when it comes from an assistant coach. They like to look at the coaching tree of the head coach. But as we've kind of highlighted here, Austin Claunch's resume, like I don't think it's fair or appropriate to call him a product of the Nate Oates coaching tree, right? Or coaching staff. I
Nah, I
mean,
wouldn't say so.
you know, he built his resume outside of Alabama. He was there for 10 months before getting hired at UTSA. So I know there's been like three other hires to come out of Alabama whenever we
Hmm.
go back to
Hmm.
last year. I don't think you should be making those comparisons or drawing those lines. And so that was just a conversation that I've seen happen. Let's not discount Austin Claunch or even let that be an influence in us evaluating him.
Yeah, I mean,
But
he seems like kind of self-made to me as far as his coaching path,
dude,
right?
totally so. I think
A
that's a
lot of
fantastic way.
a lot of these young coaches that are really ascendant, they like stick with one head coach and then ride up the ranks with that head coach. But that's not how Claunch has worked his way up. I mean, he built Nichols into a Southland power, and that's why he got a job at one of the top mid-major conferences. So it's strange to call a guy who graduated from straight Jesuit self-made. And, hey man, maybe some straight Jesuit alumni want to throw some NIL dollars at Claunch's program. Could
How
go a
about
long
that?
way.
Yeah.
But no, I think he deserves credit for that, man. I think it's cool.
Yeah. It is cool. I think it's really, really exciting, man. So Jared, you say you got to be convinced. And of course, you know, the real convincing can't happen until next basketball season. But
Sure.
what is it? What is it you got to hear from the press conference? Is it a catchy slogan like draw the line? Is it the energy? You know, he's got to replicate that
Oh,
energy. Is
man.
there something in particular you'd like to hear from him? Do you want him to kind of spell out your vision for you a little bit?
Yeah, I think that last part is the big part. Like, what does uh, a UTSA program that plays into late March look like under Claunch? Like, what's the roadmap to get there? Is the sales pitch that I want to hear, right? Whether it's going to be we're actually going to recruit the city of San Antonio, or you know, I'm putting together this
Yeah.
crazy staff. I like it could be anything really, but I just want to see some like strategic thinking of how you're going to get to where your goal is, and also hear what the goal is, like being realistic. Like no one's going to step up to the podium and say we're going to make a Final Four run, in the next 3 years. That's not fair. That's not realistic, and
Right.
that's not what we need right now. Like we need a baseline where people can care about college basketball year in and year out. I want these games to matter. I want this program to matter. And right now, to be frank, it hasn't for a long time.
How do you get people reinvested into Roadrunners basketball?
This podcast gets more download for baseball podcasts than we do for basketball podcasts. There are not many programs in America that you could say that for.
That would have never
And
happened.
That's no knock on baseball, man. It's just the reality. This is the second largest revenue sport in college athletics.
in the
Doesn't feel like
country.
it at UTSA.
In the country.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to say in the country. Right. Yeah.
Basketball is 2 to football,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%, 100%, man. And I think, when we look at Austin's Houston ties and Houston background, and then Nicholls State is in neighboring Louisiana. I don't know what his recruits look
Yeah,
like if they were all
I haven't
Houston
done that
area
far in.
guys. Yeah,
Yeah, I went and looked at the Alabama roster. There was one guy from Richardson, but didn't really see any Houston there. But of course, he was just there for 1 year, right? So
right. But this is and this is a breaking podcast. Cut us a little bit of slack here. We didn't get to go super deep on Austin Claunch's resume, but look, Louisiana being neighboring to Houston, I'd imagine he was still sort of getting his pull around the Houston area. Houston,
mhm,
a hotbed, arguably one of the top
mhm.
three, two destinations for basketball talent in the country, in
Yep,
the world. And so give it to me, man. If he's pulling recruits out of Houston and getting them to UTSA to play basketball, man, it's all going to work out. It's all going
that's
to
one
work
of
out
those
fine.
outstanding questions that I have. Is like, how well connected is Claunch in the greater Houston area when it comes to the coaching community?
So he did run camps
Yeah,
um, around Houston. So I think that's a big deal.
I think it's really. I mean, to make the Trailer comparison, before Trailer got the UTSA job, he could walk into pretty much any high school in Texas and be
Yeah,
treated like a god, right?
he was the man.
Surely Claunch is not at that level, right? Because he's so young, but does he have connections at some of those top programs in the city where they could be like, hey, man, I've got this guy. He's not getting, the offers that I think that he deserves or he's worthy of, come take a look at him. That's going to be a big difference maker, right, for this program because UTSA is not going to go out recruit Houston, UT, Texas A&M, or whatever, obviously, but they could probably get some guys that are going to schools on the East Coast that may have more to offer as far as like fan base goes and arenas and all of that. But maybe they want to stay close to home, and maybe the NIL looks decent. Who knows? But I think
Mhm.
finding those kind of those tweener recruits, if you will, where they're not like going to power conferences, but maybe want to stay home is really key.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I think like Josh Farmer is a great example of that. He's a guy that had some Power Five offers, didn't get the chance to commit on those, but turned down some out of state programs to stay close to home, and he ended up having a pretty solid career at
Yeah.
UTSA while he was here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a ton of, I mean, there's probably 100 guys like that in the Houston area that have that level of talent.
Oh yes. Absolutely. So it's hard. It's hard for Roadrunner fans. Like you said, I think everybody's going to need to be convinced. Everyone's going to actually need to see it whenever we actually get on the floor, get on the court. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of damage that needs to be undone.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of damage that needs to be undone from the Steve Henson tenure. And look, we don't want to spend this podcast railing on Steve Henson in any regard. We respect Steve Henson. We appreciate everything that he did here. He took over this program at a really, really difficult time.
Yeah.
Um, had to go through COVID era. He inherited a really, really bad roster from Brooks Thompson.
And then he had a guy that roster through losing their former coach who passed away. I mean, just
Passed
a couple of months
away.
after Henson was hired.
I mean,
Um, man,
roller
that's
coaster,
that's yeah, so tough.
a roller coaster, roller coaster. At the end of the day, Steve Henson only had two winning seasons here at UTSA. That's his second and third season on campus, 2018 and 2019 seasons. And it's insane to think that in 2018 he was named the Conference USA Coach of the Year.
Yeah, he had a great start to his career. I mean, him getting that contract extension when he didn't feel wrong at all. I mean, that was universally celebrated, I think, across the fan
Absolutely.
base. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they made it to uh they had a pretty good run in the CUSA tournament, made it into the quarterfinals that year. And this is a team that lost 19 games whenever he inherited that program. They went 14 and 19. So you go from losing 19 to then winning 20 the very next season. 2019 had an outstanding conference record. We were second in Conference USA. But at the end of the day, what Henson failed to do was develop the talent that was on the roster. A lot of the same issues that we saw from Frank Wilson. And with that being said, he didn't recruit quite as well as Frank Wilson was able to, but similarly could not develop the talent that was here in the manner of Frank Wilson. Mm-hmm. And then UTSA just didn't have the resources to make this move sooner. And unfortunately, as a consequence of that, we had to endure and continue sliding further and further down as a program for another 2 seasons. Only winning 10 games in both 2022 and 2023. 3 conference wins in 2022, 4 conference wins in 2023. Really, really rough stuff. We won 11 games this year, and we had 5 conference wins. But overall, 110 and 144. .433 winning percentage. And pretty similar in conference play, 54 and 72.429.
I think as the years pass, we're not really going to remember a lot of the details about this era. We're not going to remember the winning percentages, the wins and losses. Some of those losses will stick with me to some of those Division II teams and NAIA teams, whatever. Some really, really bad losses throughout that period. But I think what we will remember, going forward for the years to come is kind of the duality of the Javon Jackson, Keaton Wallace era at UTSA. Where on one hand, you have the most explosive, highest scoring duo of guards and literally players really in program history that provided some just absolutely dynamite moments and just a lot of fun to watch. Keaton is on a 2-way contract with, I think, the Clippers right now. So, he's continuing his professional career, and Javon's just balling out, playing for the Puerto Rican national team. And I can't remember what country he's playing professional in right now, Spain maybe, but he's had a great career as well. Not in the NBA, but, European, which is nothing to scoff at. But even having those 2 amazing talents, and I would throw Jacob Germany into that discussion as well. I think he's one of the best bigs that we've had at UTSA as far as I follow the program. Nothing to show for it. No conference tournament, no conference regular season tournament, no ranked wins, I don't think, no power program upsets that I can think of. Maybe there was one that's not coming to mind right now.
I mean, Jared, Keaton and Javon were the highest scoring guard duo in the NCAA.
Yeah.
And we've got nothing to show for it. I mean, eventually no one's even going to remember that stat.
True.
That's going to be erased eventually.
True. I've thought about that for a while, looking 10 years out, some kid gets into UTSA, he's really into basketball, becomes a big UTSA basketball fan, and he starts going through the record book, and he's like, oh my God, these guys, Javon Jackson, Keaton Wallace, were unreal. Surely they were winning 30 games and going to March Madness and making this a Sweet 16 run. And they're going to look at the record and be like, that doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense, bro. It doesn't make any sense.
I think what it comes down to is I think these teams, it did see some improvement in this area this past season, but I think these teams just year in and year out, they lacked that intensity to hit the glass, to box out, to play really tough defense.
The hustle was gone from this team.
Right. They didn't have that sense of blue collar toughness to them.
Yeah.
And I think Henson did a great job developing his guards from an offensive standpoint, but it was just really consistent that some of these guys who are putting up, 20 plus points games at the guards just didn't bring much to the table as far as defense went.
Yeah.
And I'd also say that I think the style of basketball was very loose, very free flowing. If I were to take a snapshot in my mind of what an offensive possession looked like for a defensive team, It's like one dude triples around for 20 seconds and then jacks up a contested three. And we just saw so much of that. Even in crunch time, man. I mean, like one possession to tie it or win it, and
Well,
it ends up being a dude just jacking up a three.
so to piggyback off what you're talking about, what those teams were lacking under Henson, the most glaring obvious thing to me was the lack of a leader. There was never a floor general. There was never a captain on any of these teams. Javon Jackson was very, very incapable of doing that. And no one else had the seniority to really take on that role or the talent to take on that role, and there was really nobody in the huddle that was a commanding presence, an emotional presence, someone to really rally guys, someone to coach guys on the floor, someone to get after guys and get their hustle up whenever we needed to. It looked like a pickup basketball game out there a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think there were guys that tried. Nikolai was one. I think Christian Tucker is one, but I don't think those guys had like the elite talent to be the guy that brings it on both ends, right? Where like
for guys to really listen to him and really say, yeah. I mean, if you feel like you can, if you feel like you're better than the guy that's giving you orders,
you're not going to respect them.
You're not going to respond. Absolutely, man. And so I never saw Henson develop that part, the mental, the emotional, the leadership out there, and that goes hand in hand with the hustling and being, the want to be out there, the pride of being out there. And so when we look at the resumes prior to UTSA, I think this is the stark difference. Steve Henson was always an assistant coach. He was never a head coach before he got to UTSA. He was an assistant at Illinois. He was an assistant at the Atlanta Hawks. He was an assistant for South Florida. He was an assistant for UNLV. He was an assistant for Oklahoma. But he had never captained an entire program before. And so I don't think he knew how to handle that dynamic of really being the forefront leader. And so this is the stark difference. When we look at Austin Claunch, he's been a head coach. And it's so important. And you'll hear Lisa literally say, we look for guys, girls who have head coaching experience in her interview with us. That is critical in her coaching evaluation talent evaluation of coaches. Pardon. They need to have that experience of running a program, no matter what level it was on. They need to have head coach experience.
Yep. Man, another thing that really bothered me about Henson squads, can you name a true center, a true five that played for Steve Henson at UTSA? I don't think we had a pure defensive presence, shot blocker, low block, kind of big body frame dude. Like
and all we had was closest thing we had to a five was a stretch four.
A stretch four, always
this, and that's this new age analytical basketball efficiency field goal percentage garbage crap. I hate it. I hate it. And yeah,
I'm not saying like you have to build your whole strategy around having that guy, but sometimes the flow of a game demands that you have to have the guy who can go bang down low. And UTSA never even on the bench had that guy that they could throw out there.
Well, that's so right, because when you got a big guy getting after it, that's rallying emotionally the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Oh, he just got a shot block. Oh, he just got an insane rebound. Right? He just elbowed a guy, diving after the ball. I mean, that's going to rally your guys when you get those big slam dunks, when you get a big shot block, when you get a big rebound, and you can throw an outlet pass on the fast break, right? You need that. You need to have that at the college level. You need to have that. And 100%. We're not saying we need Tim Duncan or David Robinson or Keem Olajuwon here, but you need to have a dominant force down low that can provide that defense of the basket and provide some of that big man energy, right? That the rest of the team is going to feed off of.
Because you have to have a guy that, even if you don't want to run your offense through the low post, you have to have, if the other team has that guy, you have to have someone that can go man to man with them.
Dude, and a big reason why I hate analytical and efficiency basketball is because I think that there's basketball more so than any other sport. There's so much intangible, intrinsic value that really cannot be measured by a stat sheet that you need to have. The basketball is more so a game of momentum than any other sport. And every sport is momentum based, but basketball more so than anything. And we're about to talk about the women's team, a perfect example of that in their loss to the semifinals in ECU. It is a game of momentum. And with 1 minute left, there was a timeout, and you saw two different huddles, and ECU was getting hot. They were starting their swing, tons of energy. You saw Karen Aston and the girls in that huddle. They looked worried, man.
Yeah.
Because it's a momentum swing, and they knew they didn't have the momentum. And so I'm very, very confident in Austin Claunch's ability to understand the game of basketball more so than what appears on your analytics chart on your stat sheet. You know, to hell with Daryl Morey's style of basketball. And that's coming from a Rockets fan.
Well, I do want to send Coach Henson out on a positive note as we wrap this up. You never heard anything negative about him as a person. I mean, I think he was a really great ambassador for UTSA. I think he loved it here. I think he treated his players with respect and kindness that they deserved. And I really respected, I mean, it was obvious to anyone that this was going to be his last year at UTSA. They let him coach out his contract. But you never really heard him, at least publicly, talk bad about the administration, to have a sour grapes kind of approach. He was still a good teammate, I guess you could say, to the rest of the athletic department.
Yeah.
And his guys played hard through the end, right? I mean, I think they were at a big talent disadvantage in a lot of games in the American, and they knew the future was murky and all of that. But the hustle was still there from this team. They never gave up on Steve and this program, and they continued to fight, which I had a lot of respect for. And ultimately, like, a lot of missed opportunity throughout this Henson era for sure. But I do think that Steve did drive the program forward. I think he elevated the talent. He had a couple of guys that were, borderline 4-star dudes. Jacob Germany, Carlton Lindgard, I think, was a big revelation this year. Shame he wasn't eligible last season. And then, of course, Javon, Keaton, Jordan Ivy Curry. I mean, some of the best players that we've seen come through this men's basketball program, right? And I think you got to give Steve a lot of credit for that. So, it's unfortunate. We were rooting for him for sure. He's a great guy. But I think it's time for UTSA to start treating men's basketball as a top priority, as a revenue sport. And, I'm confident that this is a reset. And I think we're going to see a lot more investment both on off the court and as well as like within the budget and stuff like that. I think we're going to see a big increase in salary. Obviously, we got Race 2.0 practice facility on the way. I'm hopeful for some improvements to the convo. I've been working on a blog post about that, actually. I've been hesitant to say anything about it because I've been lollygagging on getting it done because we've had so many big podcast interviews. But I think there's a way to make the convo not as terrible as it is now. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that changes will be made to move this program forward. And I think the American is still a really good basketball conference, even after losing the great programs that it did. 2-bid league this year, could have been 3, could have been 4, and I think we'll have 3 or 4 bid seasons for this conference. And it's not crazy to think UTSA could be one of those 4 teams that gets that 4 bid.
Yeah, definitely so. Yeah. And I do think Henson still has a future in coaching basketball, maybe not as a head coach and maybe an assistant coach or as a head coach, maybe on a lower level, in FCS or something like that. But he absolutely a player's coach and someone that his players really did love to play for. I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a great track record of taking guards and developing them and setting up to professional careers. Right. I think he's going to continue to find employment. With that aspect of his skills and abilities. Yeah,
totally. And you've got to understand, Keaton and Javon, whether it's the NBA or Euroball, these guys are getting paid to play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, they are professionals at that level, and big credit to Henson for that.
Yeah. And for me, I'll be watching closely to see how things change in regards to the basketball program. I think, UTSA punted a year on men's basketball, and I think it's the right decision, and I would have done the same thing. But
Yeah,
since they did that, I had the expectation that they're going to do it right now, right? That they're going to have big, start of the season events. What do they call them? Like the Midnight Madness or whatever.
let's go.
That's something that kind of fell off at UTSA. Like they were doing the convo, I think, which is like kind of ridiculous. Definitely upgrades need to happen to the convo. Race 2.0 has got to get built, more staff, more budget, all of that kind of stuff, right? So it's got to be a two-way street for Claunch to have success. But based on what we've seen from the leadership and the South Florida department and the university, I have no doubt that's coming. It'll probably be slower than we want, obviously, but I think it's a work in progress for sure. But I'm excited to watch it
Yeah,
unfold.
big time. Well, Jared, there's other basketball news that we've got to talk about.
We got to spend some time to give the ladies and the women's basketball team their due recognition
Yes.
for a really strong season. I think the 17-14 record understates it. There's a really strong year for Karen Aston and her squad, and the progress that we've seen from them over these past two seasons. Whew, man, it's breakneck speed of getting this program to where it could be, where they're making runs into the tournament, where they're competing to win the AAC. And I think next year, watch out, man. If Coach Aston can hold on to this young roster, the sky's the limit.
Force to be reckoned with. A force to be reckoned with. They've really, really gone and shown that they are extremely talented, extremely good, and they can play with the best of them. I mean, all of the Power Five losses were by fairly narrow margins, or several of them at least. Really, really respectable whenever they did lose to impressive teams. And then just the conference run that these girls went on to enter the conference tournament as a number 4 seed.
Which is mind blowing.
No one could have predicted that.
No.
No one could have predicted that. And on that note, this team never lost more than one game in a row. They never lost multiple. I think one they had. I think they had 1 2-loss streak. But in conference play, never dropped more than 1, and stayed hot, stayed competitive. But man, it was just a brutal ending there in the AAC semifinals. It looked like the conference tournament championship game was all but a given.
I know.
To that back half, dude.
How much was UTSA leading by? Like what's the largest lead they had? Do you remember?
I don't know what the largest lead they had was off the top of my head, but I
feel like they hit double digits at one point. It was early, but
yeah, and that first half was a little bit back and forth, but in that second half is whenever they really, really took over. UTSA was leading ECU 50-41.
Man,
before ECU closed on a 14-4 run. Shout out Stephen Whitaker.
Yeah, I got it out. UTSA had the largest lead of the game at 11 points.
And that was right there in like the final 5 minutes.
Yep.
But a 14-4 run from the Pirates is what put them ahead. And again, basketball, game of momentum, swings. And I don't know if there were like some demons here that like in the back of their minds, UTSA was worried about, because whenever we traveled to Greenville in January, we got spanked by ECU.
Right.
It was 82-54. Pirates over the Roadrunners at the beginning of January. And granted, we were still trying to figure out how this team was going to play together and look together. And they did figure that out. And they had this team everything but beat in that semifinals game. And gosh.
Now that you say that, I'm thinking back on it, and it was really interesting at halftime. They interviewed Kyra White, and she made a comment that ECU has a really good player, number 22, Danae McNeil, and they were like really focused on not getting her going. And I remember thinking like, okay, like she seems like a good player, but like nothing super out of the ordinary from what UTSA is like seen all season. And they did do a good job of limiting McNeil. She went 4 of 18 from the field, but I wonder if maybe there was like too much focus on that and that left other girls to be open for the Pirates or something. I don't know. It just
Yeah,
kind of it was interesting to me because I feel like it's kind of rare to hear people go out of their way to mention a single player in like a halftime interview like that. It just I don't know, it just stuck out to
overcommitted,
me.
overcommitted on
Maybe,
the guarding of that.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe so, maybe so. And it really did go down to the final seconds.
Yep.
ECU misses both free throws. And they're up by one possession. It's a 3-point game. So they hit one of those free throws. Then now all of a sudden it's a lot less favorable for UTSA when they miss both of those free throws, and we get the ball back. It's Sydney Love that I think puts it off the glass and pulls us within 1, 55-54. We get the intentional foul, and the Pirates miss 2 free throws again. It's a 1-point
Yeah.
game. And I don't know. I think we were already out of timeouts at the time, and got a little bit sporadic there. Didn't really have a play drawn up or know what we were going to do. There was only hardly a couple of seconds left on the clock. I'm not sure what the exact time was, but it was one of those situations you had to get the ball down court and put it in the air.
The sequence that stood up to me of like when I thought UTSA was going to lose this game after having such a large lead was Danae McNeil, who we mentioned earlier, had a 2 point layup for ECU that put them within 1 point of UTSA. UTSA then calls a timeout. They advance the ball to their side of the court, and then
Mhm.
there's a 5 second foul on Kyra White.
Oh man, that was so brutal. That was a crucial brain fart, almost reminiscent of the penalty against U of H
Oh, don't
for
say it. Don't
Jeff
say it.
Traylor's
Yeah, you're
Roadrunners
right.
back in the overtime debacle, that fourth
Yep.
quarter penalty. Yeah, I mean just a total brain fart, right?
Yep.
And it's a brain fart on the players and the coaching staff to have a
Yeah.
5 second violation occur.
And I feel like Coach Aston called that timeout to do a mental reset for the team, but
And
didn't
we
really
didn't
prepare
actually.
much of an inbound play.
Correct. It was more so of a reset than it was actually drawing up. And that's critical to come out of a timeout and have a 5 second violation. There's zero excuse for. It's a very rare occurrence of Karen Aston messing up.
Hmm.
Um, Dude, but that absolutely can't happen. But again, I go back to that huddle, man. The camera pans in and zooms into both of those huddles during that timeout sequence. And there's a very clear difference in the energy dynamic happening in both of those huddles. And ECU's still sitting on like 3 timeouts with like a minute left. We're
Yeah,
completely
they're
out.
confident.
We're completely out of timeouts at that time. So you see also the game management from both sides, a little bit of a mismanagement to not have any timeouts in a game that's going down to the wire with a minute left. And that can't happen. It just cannot happen. Alas, Jared, we've got to just give a tremendous shout out to how damn good this women's basketball team is. Jordan Jenkins, Sydney Love, Kyra White, Alicia Proctor, Alyssa Coleman.
Dara Udo.
Yes,
I can't pronounce her name. Sienna, the 3 point shooter. Godara, I
Cheyenne
think.
Cheyenne Rowe coming off the bench
Yeah.
and 4 for 5. Are you kidding me?
And almost
It's
all those girls come back next year.
yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what they say? You got to lose before you can win. You don't just get to show up and win it. You've got to get there, learn how to be there at that level, right? Postseason play. You got to endure that a little bit. And we're learning how to play in the postseason. It's different. It is different.
Mhm.
Anything can happen. Anything can happen with just a few minutes left. You never know. It's a
Yeah.
game of momentum, and we're learning how to play at that level. And so the ceiling is still tremendously high for this team. Don't discount what happened in that game. It wasn't a once in a lifetime, a once in a generation chance. No, this is a team that's going to have a lot more chances at that title. It
Adrian,
hurt
they might have more chances this season. I think they're in the mix for a women's NIT invite.
for sure. For
We're
sure.
we're seeing some power conference turn down invites to the NIT on the men's side. I don't know if that's happening for the women or not, but I think UTSA's got a real shot at getting a women's NIT invite. And I've heard that they're already cleared to accept any postseason invitation they might get.
Mm.
So that would be great to see. And I think the girls really deserve it. I think if Jordan Jenkins was healthy this season, there would be like no doubt that they would be going to at least the women's NIT, if not getting an at-large bid
Sure.
for the tournament. But I think it's best for the program. I think this team get a lot better with Jordan on the sideline because it caused other girls to step up into leadership roles and get key minutes. And we just saw them develop, through that first like 2 months of the season. So everything happens for a reason. I hope that they get another chance this year. But if not, I have really high expectations for next season. And I'm really stoked to see them compete.
Definitely so, man. This team is going to continue the upward trend. And Jared, I think Karen Aston is going to stick around for next season. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
fairly confident in that.
Yeah, I
Would you
think
say?
so. I think she would only leave for a really ideal situation that I don't know if she's going to be a candidate for
Right,
something like that,
right, right,
Because like she's done an amazing job rebuilding this, but if you're like a Texas Tech or a TCU, I don't know if you're going to look at the results and really appreciate the work that she's done. You know what I mean?
right, right. Yeah, because there's just too much there that can't be measured based off of that. And sure, you can point back to all of her success at UT, but it's almost too far gone for a program to
Yeah.
make a hire based just solely off of that.
Right. I agree.
Right. There's going to be another hot commodity that's going to be a more headline hire for a program that's looking for their next coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Agreed. I'm more worried about the transfer portal hitting the team hard. We'll see how it goes.
But I don't know, Jared. I think Karen Aston has sort of built this culture there in the same fashion
Yeah.
Jeff Traylor has built it for
Yeah.
the football program, and Hallmark has built it for the baseball program. These guys want to play here and they want to win here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And that's what a winning culture is all about. That's what a sustainable program is built on. I think Karen Aston's doing it.
Yep. I'm with you, man. All right, well, it was good talking some hoops with you. We didn't do a lot of it these past couple of months. Good to get it out of our system and good to be looking ahead towards the future. I'm excited to watch this press conference with Coach Claunch that just happened and his actual introductory press conference in person. Hopefully with him coming off a national championship for Alabama, which feels awful leaving my mouth, but it's what we got to root for this March, no doubt.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So because I thought it wasn't quite clear if he was going to stick around for the tournament run for Alabama.
No, he is coaching out the season in Alabama.
Okay, nice.
So we'll see how long that is. Roll Tide.
That's the wildest send-off in Alabama Audible history. Holy cow.